Next, I wanted to talk about social media and addictive tendencies. So I asked the question, would you consider yourself addicted to social media and how? As you can see, as you continue reading, many people answered yes to this question. I'll read off a few responses. Yes, I rely on my cell phone and have high amounts of screen time. 100% I am constantly on some form of social media because that's what I rely on for entertainment. Unfortunately, yes, it's our whole world. It's how our whole world works now. And then I got some conflicting answers. I got no, because I limit myself. I don't worry about likes or how many people see my story. The questionnaire taker said yes, I feel it can be addicting sometimes for myself because I've grown up for the past 8 years with social media. Hence, again, the name digital natives. And as you can see, I asked the question, do you feel our generation Gen Z has a general addiction to social media? All 13 respondents answered yes. 100% Generation Z has a general addiction to social media. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about facades and fake representations of who we are on social media. We all know that one girl or guy who hypes themselves up so much, too much, but we all know deep down that that is not exactly the reality of his or her situation. So I asked survey take or questionnaire takers if they have ever put on a facade while engaging in social media. And as you can see, the results were almost split down the middle. The same goes for another question I asked. Questionnaire takers were asked if any aspect of them was ever changed due to social media. This was also almost split in half with answers. There are so many reasons why people would do this. Maybe it's an image thing or a security thing or something else. There's always some explanation. People might do this for validation. People might do this to gain more respect or to gain more followers. There are endless explanations. So next I wanted to get into the sciencey stuff. So first, from a study by Sarek Inc., um, they systematically analyzed the existing literature on the effects of social media use on mental health. So these are just a few quotes and conclusions that they made of the study. They concluded that anxiety and depression were the most commonly measured outcome. Some teens experience anxiety from social media related to fear of loss, which causes teens to try to respond and check all their friends' messages on a regular basis, aka FOMO. Individuals who are involved in social media, games, texts, mobile phones, etc., are more likely to experience depression. So, the more social media you have, the more likely you are to experience emotions and feelings of depression. Lastly, social media promotes putting on a facade that highlights the fun and excitement, but does not tell us much about where we are struggling in our daily lives at a deeper level. And finally, symptoms of major depression have been found among the individuals who spend most of their time in online activities and performing image management on social networking sites. Moving on to a different source, 81% of teens in the US use social media. FOMO, or fear of missing out, plays a role. Decreased, disrupted, and delayed sleep, which is associated with depression, memory loss, and poor academic performance. So there's not only a mental aspect to the effects of social media, there is also a physical aspect. Social media can put a distorted lens on appearances and realities, hence facades and false realities. Cyberbullying peaks during adolescence, and large overlap has been found between victims and bullies. These are just some fancy words. Using functional MRI, fMRI, researchers have involved increased activity in the orbitofrontal cortex and insula after participants experienced exclusion, possibly signaling increased arousal and negative effect. Stronger activity in the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, otherwise known as the ACC, if you took psychology, is observed in adolescents and young adults with a history of being socially excluded, maltreated, or insecure attachment, whereas spending more time with friends reduced ACC response in adolescence to social exclusion. Neuropsychological research showed that being accepted evokes activation in similar brain regions as when receiving other rewards such as money or pleasant tastes. Neuroimaging studies in adolescents showed that peer feedback indeed influences adolescent behavior. Girls are especially sensitive to pressure for media's thin body ideal, and peer feedback supporting this ideal is associated with more body dissatisfaction. So there's also a gender aspect where girls can and are more affected than social media rather than boys. This is just the appreciation for the source in my citation. So finally, we come to a conclusion. These are not very scientific, they're more general, they're more known, and they're kind of common knowledge. So, social media is a contributing factor to mental health issues. It can be addicting if used and abused. It can be very toxic, yet somewhat engaging and satisfying if used correctly. Social media is unpredictable and complex. It is scientifically proven to invoke mental health concerns upon those who use it. When engaging in social media, one must be careful, cautious, and aware. So, at the end of the questionnaire, I asked two last questions. Do you feel as though social media can produce mental health issues? Do you feel social media has led to a rising in mental health issues amongst our generation? I had these before in the project, but I wanted to bring them back up again because I feel like they're really relevant right now. And as you can see, the majority of respondents answered yes. I followed up with a last question. I asked, lastly, if you have any further opinions or comments on social media and its relation to mental health, please take the time to list them down below. And here were some of the responses. Some of them were starting social media when young can make young children not know the good and bad of people and believe what they see on social media. It makes you feel like you have to look a certain way, weight a certain weight. And then these were some more opinionated responses. Social media is literally trash, but it's good trash for the many people who actually have feelings and need validation. Social media can really tarnish and negatively affect their mental health. Seeing people like Kylie Jenner with her so-called perfect body and huge lips can make one feel like crap. That's another thing that comes into play. Influencers, influences. Lastly, I think as a generation, we are very obsessed with people liking us because that's what we want. A lot of us use this as a way of determining our worth and likability. I think that's what's sad and causing the mental illness increase. I do believe there are positives to social media, but I think we need to stop obsessing about being liked and focus on things that are more important. And finally, I'd just like to review what we just went through. So first, we went through the process of how I went about this. Second, we analyzed the personal data based off of the responses I received from the questionnaire takers. We then compared that to scientific research and data. Fourth, we addressed the potential presence of bias. Fifth, we addressed both the behavioral and psychological effects derived from social media. And sixth, we finally came to a conclusion. And that just about wraps it up, guys. So thank you for listening. I appreciate your time.